I'll never call off. Fourth quarter pressure. Back of the jersey. Double sevens. No matter how many times, I never get tired of that reference. Hall of Fame for dirt. We love you with a deep reverence.
Hi, this is Luka Doncic.
Hi, I'm Kyrie Irving.
And you're listening to the Mavs Step Back Podcast.
They waiting on my fall off. I'll never call off. Fourth quarter pressure. Back of the jersey. Double sevens. No matter how many times, I never get tired of that reference. Hall of Fame for dirt. We love you with a deep reverence. Backcourt nasty. I wonder who gon' check him. Cuban did his thing when he went and got number 11. I still got his picture on my wall at 707. Feel synonymous with Kyrie, how we both train with aggression. Competition obsolete. Trying to breathe life into my dreams. I'm so tired of sleep. Still got some work from last season that was incomplete. So hungry for redemption. Thank my boys, just might overeat. Like Luka with his three of them hit, my mic is prone to overheat. I pride myself the most. I'm 22 and my folks proud of me. I took the hard away since I was 10. Was no surprise to me. A step back, Mavs blowing up was no surprise to me. And I'm speaking honestly. 7.
How's it going, everybody? Welcome in to another episode of the Mavs Step Back Podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Trigg. Today, I have a very special guest. It's Keith Smith. You can find him on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Keith Smith NBA. He does a lot of work for Spot Track. He's got his own show, the Front Office Show. Go check that out. They're on YouTube as well. But Keith, I appreciate you joining me today. We have a very exciting NBA Finals matchup. The Dallas Mavericks, the Boston Celtics. I know the Mavs are a number 5 seed. They haven't played like it for the last 2 to 3 months. The Boston Celtics, they have been the best team in the league all year. The entire regular season. They have, very easily, gone through the Eastern Conference and, just asserted their dominance. So, it's a battle of two titans, in my opinion. Now, I know the Celtics are going to be favored, and they have earned that right. But, I do think the Mavs, stand a fighting chance in this series too. And I want to get your thoughts on it. So, first of all, I appreciate you coming on here and spending some time with us. We greatly appreciate that. But just what are your initial thoughts on this Mavs versus Celtics series? And then, we'll go into some specific stuff after that. But what are you looking forward to the most for the finals starting this Thursday?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with – even though the Mavs are coming in as the 5 seed, making the finals and all that, it's been since really just after the trade deadline. I know they had that one rough, about a 2-week stretch post-trade deadline. Since then, they've been one of the absolute best teams in the league, and they continue to play like that throughout the course of the playoffs. I think it was late March when I tweeted something along the lines of, I'm this close to picking Dallas in any series except for against Denver. And we never get to see what it would be against Denver because the Nuggets got bounced before we got there. So they took care of business in the first round, second round, and then handled the Wolves with, I'll say, relative ease because those games were close. It was kind of like the Celtics in the East Finals, right? The games were close, but the series was never actually in doubt. So, so I think the thing I'm really looking forward to, well, there's 2 things semi-related to each other. First is just there's a lot of star power in this series. You have Luka and Kyrie on the Mavs side. You got Tatum and Brown on the Celtics side. The role players are all pretty good, I think, for both teams. I think, as is the case often as teams get deeper and deeper into the playoffs, the role players just become more household names to everybody who's watching because it's like people who had never heard of a guy 3-4 months ago are like, oh, man, I love that guy. He's so great now. And it's just because you've been seeing him play for the last 2 months of the playoff run. Then I think the other part of it is just the cross matches and the things these 2 teams are going to do to each other on both ends of the floor, how they're going to defend each other, what that's going to look like. I'm really excited to see all that play out.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because, one thing, my co-host, Drew Johnson, who normally comes on here with me post-game, we were talking about it when the Mavs clinched their NBA Finals berth. They're going to have to change up their defensive schemes in this series from what they were doing against the Timberwolves, because the Timberwolves, I mean, they had some guys that shot the three well in certain games throughout that Western Conference Finals, but overall, I mean, they're not a great three-point shooting team. It's different with the Celtics. Everybody on the Celtics can shoot threes. So, where the Mavs were packing the paint and willing to give up open threes against Minnesota, you're not going to be able to do that against Boston. They're going to have to kind of switch things up a little bit, maybe keep one guy back to, protect the rim if a guy gets blown by on the perimeter. But I don't think the Mavs are going to be able to afford to give up the same looks that they were willing to give up against Minnesota. And to Jason Kidd's credit, he's been coaching his ass off this postseason. That's the only way I can put it. He's been great. I have no doubt that he is looking at that, and he's probably going to have some tweaks here and there. But I mean, is there anything else specifically you see that the Mavs are probably going to have to do different? Because that's the biggest thing in my opinion. Instead of just packing the paint and leaving the corners open, you're going to have to be more perimeter oriented and give up more inside or in the mid range, to give yourself a decent chance to win if you're the Mavs.
Yeah, I think Dallas, you can't take too much from I like to say the one regular season game these two teams played, because the first game, half the guys are different on Dallas's roster, so it doesn't really matter. And I'm being a little facetious there, but that was before the trade deadline, so who cares? That game after the trade deadline, there's more concepts I think you can pull out. Then I don't come in thinking, well, Boston's an 18 point better than Dallas is, and they're just going to roll over them. I don't think that's the case at all. But some of the concepts, and one of the things is in that game, in the first quarter specifically, you can see Derek Lively, who at the time I feel like by the time you hit this point in a rookie season, you're not really a rookie anymore. You've kind of done your rookie stuff, and you've proven yourself. But in that game, which was on March 1st, so about 3 months ago, you saw Lively in the pick and pop against Kristaps Porzingis. Mavs didn't switch it. They just kind of get over the screen. Lively will come out and pick up. Lively steps out to Kristaps Porzingis, or better put, where he thought Kristaps Porzingis would be, close to the line. Kristaps Porzingis spaces 3 to 5 feet behind the line on a very regular basis. So Lively closed out, and you can almost see the thought process in his brain of, oh crap, I still have another 2 steps to get to him, and he's 7'3" and just going to shoot over me anyway. So you could see that was the way. Now, 3 months of experience more, the fact that he is deeper into his career now, the fact that he's seen a lot of things, he's played really well in this playoff run. I don't know that that's going to catch him off guard, but those are the ways the Celtics stress you is. They play 5 out, but I like to say they play extreme 5 out, because the other thing with them playing like that, other than really Sam Hauser, and then if they go to a third big in Luke Cornett or Xavier Tillman, every single guy they play can at least put the ball on the floor for a couple dribbles and get to the next play, whether that's the shot for themselves or finding the pass or just getting the ball moving or whatever it is. The rest of the guys are, it's Hauser, Cornett, and Tillman. If those guys see the floor, they're more shoot or then immediately pass or whatever it is. Right. Everybody else, even Porzingis, can put it on the floor for a couple of dribbles and find something. And that's very different, I think, than the teams Dallas has played thus far, where in that way, that's going to be a kind of an early thing that we're going to see. How much do they spread them out? How much are they able to pull the bigs away? How much is Dallas willing to, what are you willing to give up? Because with the Celtics, you have to find something that you're uncomfortably comfortable with saying, let them have that, because that's what it's going to be. Indiana tried it with Al Horford, we're just going to let him shoot threes. If we lose because Al Horford makes a bunch of threes, so be it. He did it. Then they adjusted and took those away. And then they beat him in a different way. And then it was, all right, we're going back to that. Horford did it again. They tried to adjust and take it away. So you just got to kind of pick your poison on what are we going to have. And to some extent, hope we're going to catch them on one of those nights where they're not making shots. We are making shots, and we beat them that way.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And look, to your point about the regular season matchups not meaning too much, even even in that second matchup, I was just looking at the box score just to kind of refresh my memory. I mean, that was before Jason Kidd made his starting lineup change. Now once he put Derrick Jones Jr. and Daniel Gafford as the full-time starters, the Mavs never skipped a beat at the end of the regular season, and that carried on into the postseason. And then you had Tim Hardaway Jr., who played 20 minutes in that game at Boston. He's fallen out of the rotation. He's not playing any now. Jaden Hardy has come more onto the scene into that Tim Hardaway Jr. role. So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that has changed, but, stylistically, I think you're right. I mean, it really is a pick your poison situation. And one thing I'm interested in seeing how it plays out, Porzingis has been out for a while. And obviously him coming back, it's going to help. It's going to help for sure, because now you have two big men that can space the floor. You got Porzingis, who I assume will come back and start, and then Horford come back off the bench, and both guys can hit threes. So that's going to help big time. But I do wonder, how rusty he's going to be, because even if he's fully recovered from I believe it's a knee issue, or calf strain. That's right. Yeah, calf strain. Even if he's healed from that, the fact remains he hasn't played basketball in a long time, like real NBA game basketball. So I do wonder if the Mavs can take advantage of that in these first couple of games and at least steal one on the road going back to Dallas, just because he's rusty. But what are your thoughts on Porzingis specifically, and the time he's been out, and do you think it's going to have, if Russ is going to have any kind of factor in this, or you think he's going to hit the ground running?
Yeah, I think there's a chance he'll be a little rusty. I'm not as worried about it on the offensive end. I think there's sometimes, as basketball fans, people will say, well, he's a 20-point per game guy, and now he's coming back, so you just throw 20 points per game on whatever they've averaged this far. That's, much as I wish it was that easy, that's not how it works, right? Somebody else ate up some of his reps and those kind of things. But he does bring a different dynamic. Horford does not space 3 to 5 feet behind the line. Horford is not a guy you're going to throw it to at the nail against a smaller defender and let him go to work like they do with Porzingis. It's been very telling to me. I'm not calling Mavericks fans out in this in any way, because Boston fans are the exact same way. Who continues to watch guys when they leave town versus that player is what they were when they were here, and that's it. They haven't improved. They're the same guy. Kristaps Porzingis is a completely different player than he was when he was with the Mavericks.
Yep.
When he was with the Mavericks, it was, I need touches in the post, and I'm going to turn and try to mash guys in the goal. He doesn't really do that anymore. He still gets those touches in the post, but what he'll do is he'll get them now at like 10 feet out, and then he'll take a dribble or two. And if the guy kind of plays him weird or he can't overpower him, we'll go all the way in. But more often than not, he turns around and he's like, a 10-foot jump shot against just about anybody in this league is a shot I can make most of the time over guys because they're so small. So he just is very patient, turns and takes that. He still takes the three-pointers like we've talked about. Now, I do think he might be a little rusty because as much as he's been practicing, it sounds like he's been getting in some pretty good work here in the last couple of weeks. I think one of the big challenges is that's practice. It's not game speed. They aren't game reps. His teammates are going to be hitting him the way he'll get hit in the game from other guys. Not saying anything dirty or illegal, just it's physical. And guys are going to be, hey, let's not hurt him before we get to game one in our own practice gym, right? Let's be careful. So I think what we're going to see is you might take him a little bit there. I'm actually more worried about him defensively, and if his timing is a little off, because Boston does ask their bigs to do a lot of different stuff. They'll ask them to switch. The next possession down, it'll be, all right, we're going to start zone, then we're going to go into our matchup man where you just grab whoever's closest to you and you defend. Or we're going to ask you to play in drop coverage and those kind of things. Maybe they go to an extremely simplified scheme where it is, hey, when you're on the floor, just until the rust is knocked off, we're going to stay in the drop coverage, and that'll keep it easy on you. And that's how they'll do it. We'll see. I don't know what that'll look like, but I do think there's going to be some rust. And I also think, to your point, is, yeah, if you're Dallas, if you can steal one of these two, you're now going home, having taken home court advantage to what's going to be an absolutely raucous environment trying to lift you going forward. that's huge because you don't want to just be, all right, let's hold serve through the first 3-4 games of this series and hope for the best, because that generally experience tells me that doesn't usually work out best for the lower seeded team. You usually want to steal one of those first two.
Yeah. And KP coming back is interesting because, like I said, the starting lineup has changed for the Mavs since the last time these teams played. And so I feel like those cross matches are going to change a little bit too, because you're going to have Daniel Gafford starting out on KP instead of Lively. And Gafford, I can't remember exactly. I don't know if Gafford got hurt in that last game or what, but he only played 6 minutes and he wasn't in foul trouble. So I'm not sure exactly what happened there, but he only played 6 minutes in that game. And it was fairly close. The Mavs were down 7 at halftime. So I'm not sure what happened there, but that'll be interesting to see. It'll be the same situation though, where they're pulling the Mavs center out toward the 3-point line unless they switch and maybe you put a guy like PJ Washington on KP. So it'll be interesting to see. Like you said, the offensive end, you're probably not as worried as much about that if you're a Celtics fan, but defensively, I know from KP's time in Dallas, that was one thing where even when KP was fully healthy, he could block shots and everything, but his lateral quickness wasn't exactly where we thought it should be. There was a lot of times where he got beat, and it was frustrating, but it was just one of those things. But KP,
I feel like if I can tag in there very quickly, sorry to interrupt you, is going back to when he was with the Knicks in the whole unicorn stuff and all that stuff about him was one of the things that he did move better on the perimeter then. I think that ACL tear really robbed him of some of that lateral quickness where he just wasn't able to stay in front of guys. Now, what I think really started in Washington, then I think Boston has really built upon is, hey, we're going to either put you in a position where we're not going to ask you to do that. We are not going to intentionally say, go switch on to Luka. It's going to be, if that happens, we're going to get you out of it one way or another, right? It'll either be we're going to fight back. And I think there's a world where if it is, whether it's Luka or Kyrie as kind of the main off-the-ball scoring guys, or on-ball scoring guys, I should say, I think Boston may say, not that they're going to put 2 on the ball because they don't do that very often, but it'll be just hedge till we can recover. If that means we give up a lob or two, we're going to hope either our weak side defender comes in and takes that away and you can't get to the third pass, or it'll be a situation where it is, all right, if we give up a lob dunk or two, we give up a lob dunk or two. It's better than letting them walk into an open 3-pointer or letting them kind of get you on a switch where they kind of then, we've all seen Luka toy. Poor Rudy Gobert got picked on for it so much. But Luka does that to every big, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's not a Dallas game that goes by where he's not like, get me the center. I don't care who it is. I'm going to play with him out here. I'm going to mess around with him. I'm going to either go by him, I'm going to shoot on him, whatever I'm going to do. I'm going to make his life miserable. So I think Boston will do what they can to try to stay out of that as best as they can.
Yeah. Well, you're right. He hunts that. It was a little bit different with OKC just because, Chet Holmgren, he's a little bit more mobile. You didn't see it as much there, but especially in the first round against the Clippers with Zubac and then in the Western Conference Finals against Gobert. And there's a little bit more personal stuff there between Luka and Gobert, so that made it.
Yeah, somebody needs to tell that whole story at some point. I've only heard it goes back to some it was some national team thing between their teams at some point, and that's when they started to dislike each other. But Luka's like man number 1,000 on the list of guys that for some reason don't like Rudy Gobert. Real or imagined or otherwise. For whatever reason, people don't like him.
It wouldn't shock me at all if Luka, made something up in his head just to not, just to not like Rudy Gobert. So
he does have that trait, which is not a criticism. That's all the best do. When I grew up as a Larry Bird kid, and Bird would sometimes people were like, I didn't even say anything, and he's out here like busting my tail and talking trash to me. Like I was like, I'm purposely not going to get him mad, and he's like, and then Bird's yelling at him because they weren't talking to him.
Yeah.
So I think Luka's got a lot of that in him too.
Yeah, it may just have something. Gobert and France, they were the whole reason that Slovenia didn't get a medal in the previous Olympics. So It may just be something like that. All I know is Luka's now 2-0 against him in the NBA playoffs. So he's gotten his lick back. But okay, so look, one more thing I want to touch on with you, and then I'll get you out of here. But obviously, the Kyrie stuff is going to be a big factor in this series because Boston fans still feel some type of way about Kyrie. He said he was going to come back in free agency that year if the Celtics would have him. He didn't. He went to Brooklyn with KD. That was a big ordeal. Celtics fans probably feel like they didn't get the best they could have gotten out of Kyrie. And, I'm sure Kyrie now, in hindsight, would probably agree with that to an extent because he's matured a good bit. This is not the same Kyrie Irving that we saw over the last handful of years. Like, he is in a much better place mentally, physically. He's from the top of the organization down. He's had full support. So, it's just a completely different ballgame. But, fans don't forget how a certain guy did their team several years ago. So there's still going to be that hate, I guess you'd say, coming from the Boston crowd. And one thing ESPN's Tim McMahon said the other day on his podcast that I found interesting, the way he put it is that Celtics fans are going to give Kyrie Irving hell in this series. And he said Luka is probably going to take that personally.
So, I heard the same thing.
Yeah, so it's not just it going toward Kyrie, but as close as Luka and Kyrie have gotten together, he said Luka's going to take it personally, which I could see because Luka's always looking for some kind of edge. Well, how do you see this Kyrie stuff playing out throughout the series? How do you expect him to perform against his former team? And then how much do you think that will provide an extra motivation factor on Luka and Kyrie's part, for this NBA Finals?
Yeah, to the last part, I would hope for every guy on both the Celtics and the Mavericks, you don't need any more motivation other than there's a trophy at the end of this thing. There's a banner, there's a ring, and you become a legend forever. Like that ought to be all the motivation you need. Then, somebody yelled bad at me or my friend, and, so now I'm going to go bust their butt on it. Like, I don't know. That part I would hope these guys are plenty motivated, but I get it, right? It kind of goes back to what we were just talking about. These guys, if something's not there, they motivate themselves with something made up anyway. So who knows? On Kyrie, I am not anywhere near naive enough to suggest, bygones or be bygones and all is forgotten. It's going to probably be pretty bad. I think it's lessened a little bit on his last couple of visits into Boston because I think the fans are there's something like 10-0 in their last 10 games against Kyrie's teams. So that's part of it. Then part of it is it's been 5 years since he left. But I think now, though, it's the finals, right? And it's like everybody's going to be amped up and fired up. It's also these games are the latest Celtics games usually start at 7:30 or occasionally 8 o'clock on a national TV night. We're talking 8:30 starts in the finals. That gives, to put it very bluntly, people are going to go enjoy themselves for a few hours before they get in the building. We all know what that does to a crowd. Yeah. So now we're in a spot where you're going to have people are fired up for the finals, and it's probably going to be ugly. It's probably going to get over the line at times, which is unfortunate and not how it should be. Yeah. I think people are, I always say, like, you want to boo a guy, fine. I don't even know how much players really care about that, but leave the player's family out of it.
Right.
Leave, ridiculous stuff that's got nothing to do with anything out of it.
Don't throw water bottles.
That's where I was going. You have no right to do anything physical to anybody there. You have. I don't care if he walks out there, pulls his pants down, and takes a dump on the logo. You don't have any right to go after him physically. Now, if the Celtics want to put in, Svi Mikhailuk off the end of their bench and say, hey, wipe him out when you have a chance, that's different. That's between the teams taking care of business. They're not going to do that either. Guys don't really. This is not the NBA I grew up on in the 1980s and early 90s. That's not going to happen. But fans have no right to get physical with a player or anybody associated with anyone ever. Like, that's it. But I think Kyrie's going to play it smart. I think Kyrie, to your point, is a different guy. I think he's going to very much be like, hey, I was here. I get it. They're not happy. It didn't work out. I'm happy where I am. my career took a different path. I'm happy to be here, and off we go. He's going to be very diplomatic about it. He has been so far. And who knows, if Dallas wins, maybe then we'll get something out of him. I kind of doubt we'll even get it there. I think we'll probably get a little bit more of the, hey, I don't want to talk about that. Let's talk about us having won the title and all those things. I hope people are reasonable about it and don't get too over the line. In as far as Kyrie's play itself, I think the matchup is a little challenging for him because the Celtics have good physical defensive guards in White and in Holiday. When he's pulling a switch, more often than not, he's going to be switching into Brown or Tatum. I think the Celtics are going to go at him offensively and make him work on that end of the floor too. And I think one of the best things that really, I'll say since the trade deadline, really, but it's been most of the year, I thought his defense has been pretty solid, where he's really held up and done some good stuff on that end. So I think there's a world where he does okay, and you can't overdo it with that. Same with trying to go at Luka. If you get silly with it, you're now out of your regular offense, and you're not playing the way you play. But if you find the mismatch naturally, go at it and go. I just hope nobody turns it into, Kyrie shot, 5 of 15. That was all the crowd got in his head. No, he probably shot 5 of 15 because Drew Holiday or Derek White played great defense.
Right.
Like, let's call it what it is. I don't know how much he's going to let the crowd really do anything to impact his game. I think it's really going to be about the guys on the floor more than anything else. Even if I own, it's probably going to get really nasty and ugly at times with him specifically.
Well, it's kind of like it's kind of like in the second round of the playoffs when the Mavs played the Thunder. He had his worst, points per game production at least, because most of the time he was matched up with Jalen Williams. So, the much bigger guy. And again, he played great defense for most of that series, but, it took a toll on him. To play the type of defense he was playing, you have to give up something. And he gave up, a good bit on the offensive end in that series. But, PJ Washington picked up the slack where he was coming short in that series. So PJ Washington was the second offensive option pretty much for the majority of that series next to Luka. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out because, like you said, the stars are going to do their thing. Luka, Kyrie, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, they're all going to do their thing. This is going to come down to the role players. And, in my opinion, I think, the rebounding and the points in the paint stuff could play a big factor. That's been the skeleton key for the Mavs, this entire postseason run. When they control the boards and the points in the paint, they typically win. So it'll be interesting to see if they can continue to do the same thing against the Celtics in the NBA Finals. So, Keith,
to that point, I just want to add real quickly.
Yeah, go ahead.
Boston has generally been a pretty good rebounding team in the playoffs, but that's been against Miami, who was limited. Bam was kind of their only big that they were playing regularly. And then in the second round, Cleveland didn't have Jared Allen. It was pretty much Evan Mobley. And then in Indiana is just not a team that's going to get on the offensive glass all that often. Dallas is a whole different animal for them, and they're going to need all 5 guys getting in there, getting back, really hitting the glass. And the Celtics love to fly out at a shooter and then leak out and trust someone else will clean it up. They'll get the ball ahead, and we'll steal a little bit of easy offense. I think both teams have to sometimes really curb their natural inclination to steal offense by getting out early in trying to get good matchups or whatever it is in transition or even fast break points until you're absolutely certain, all right, we've got the ball. Because as I say all the time, and I've stole this from a million coaches, defense doesn't stop till you have the ball, right? Like if you can force the toughest shot in the world, but if you don't rebound the miss, you're still playing defense. So that's where you got to really be careful because I think Boston is a very opportunistic offensive rebounding team. And it tends to more be the guards. It'll be White or Holiday or even Peyton Pritchard, who, we have this running joke where we say he leads the league in offensive rebounds per inches tall because he's just pesky. He just gets in there and creates extra stuff. Both teams are going to have to be really certain of, all right, we've secured the ball and now we go. And that's where these are 2 pretty good offensive teams. We might see it be a little lower scoring than I think some people are thinking. I think both sides have the potential for I call them an avalanche game, where it just kind of goes wrong. Every team, they make every three they take, and it's like, man, we let up 140 points and we lost. Like that happens, and you just move on. But I don't think we're going to see too many of those, and I don't think we're going to see too many 125, 120 shootouts either. I think we might see it be a little. Let's face it, nobody plays games under 100 anymore, but like we may see it be more like 110, 105 kind of games, or it's a little lower scoring just because I think you have to focus so much more on defense than trying to steal some offense.
Oh yeah, I completely agree. I don't expect it to be as down in the mud like that Minnesota series was in the Western Conference Finals, but I could see it being the same in the way that the scoring isn't going to be as high. So I don't think it's going to be that severe, but I definitely don't think it's going to be, like you said, barn burners every game. So Keith, one more question for you. I have to ask you before we take off here. What's your prediction for this series? Who wins and in how many games?
All right. I'm back and forth on this a million times. I'm obviously going to pick the Celtics, and it's not just because I am a Celtics guy. I think they've been the best team in the league all year, and I think that's going to continue here in the finals. I don't like picking a team to win on the road in 6 games. I feel like if you are so confident in your team winning, be confident in picking them earlier. And picking a team to win in 6 on the road, it feels like that doesn't happen all that often throughout not just the finals, but like the course of the playoffs. I am pretty confident this may play out where we have a final scoring margin of like 15 points for the entire series, but I'm picking Boston to win in 5. And some of the people who have said to me, they're like, that's super disrespectful of the Mavericks. It isn't. I just think I think the Celtics will take care of business at home, and I think they'll get one on the road. I think they're not a good matchup for this Dallas team, because what's different about them versus everybody else Dallas has played so far is the way they play offense. People, for whatever reason, it continues to get overlooked. This is historically the best offense the NBA has ever seen by almost every measure that's available. And the difference is they also defend. And they're not going to shut Dallas down by any means. Like we just said, it's not going to be a bunch of 95, 90 games and things like that. But they're going to make them work. And what we have seen the Celtics do all year long is lock in when they need to and get stops. Final game 4 against the Pacers, they held the Pacers scoreless over the final 3.5 minutes of the game. And that's the kind of things they can do. And I think Luka will get his, Kyrie will get his. I think to some extent it's going to be, let's just try to make sure Gafford doesn't have a game where he's 10 offensive rebounds and kills us. Lively's not keeping every ball alive, and they're getting 3 and 4 shots on a possession. Let's really lock in, be smart. If Luka scores, so be it. We tip our cap, we move along. And I think that's going to be the difference ultimately in the series. And I think just Boston's depth of really good players, where if Tatum or Brown is slightly off, that can come through. Holiday or White or Porzingis being back. Porzingis was back. Porzingis wasn't back, I should say. I still would have picked Celtics, but I would have picked Celtics in 7. But I think he makes a massive difference in this series too.
Well, look, and like I said, the Celtics are they've been so consistently good, historically good. They've earned the right to be the favorites in this series. And, you never know what's going to happen in a series. Injuries can play a factor. Certain guys stepping up and playing above what their normal role is can play a factor. You never really know. But going into it, I don't think anybody would, or they shouldn't think it's disrespectful for people picking the Celtics, because they've earned it. They've been the best team all year, and if they play up to their ceiling, it's easy to see how that could be the case. Now, on the flip side of that, I think the Mavs have a legitimate shot, but they got to have everybody playing well. The Celtics, they're so good from top to bottom. You can't have a weak link, so to speak. So, it's going to be tough, but I think it's going to be fun. I think we're in for a classic finals. All the narratives, Kyrie going back to Boston, KP coming back to Dallas. It's all the extra stuff that seems like was missing from last year's finals when the Nuggets swept the 8-seeded Miami Heat. It's a little bit different this year. There's a little bit more juice to it. So I'm super excited for it. I'm sure you are too. But Keith, I appreciate you joining me, man. We'll have to do it again sometime. Maybe we can recap this, everything that happened, later on in the summer and get you back on here. But I appreciate you taking the time to join me. It was great, man.
I appreciate you having me. The only thing I'll close with, can he get here already?
Oh,
Good
man.
God, like this wait has been, it's taking forever. Like, what are we doing, man? Like, let's just, let's play. Like, I do think there's a chance. I'll just close with this. I think the first quarter of game one might be a complete mess for both teams where neither team has played in a week. Like, it's going to be, I think there's a chance you're going to see these teams come out. And I've seen this before with the Celtics, Jaylen Brown in particular. He sometimes comes out after a break, like shot out of a cannon and not in a good way. Like, he is like every jump shot, like, did he break the backboard? Do we need to replace it? Like, because he just kind of comes out like ready to go and throwing balls in the 10th row of the seats and stuff like that. I think there's a real chance that gets real messy. But yeah, let's just get this thing started already. Like, I'm tired of waiting for it. I'm tired of all the talking. Like, man, I'm ready to go. I'm fired up for it too. But thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, we greatly appreciate you joining us, Keith. Look, have a great rest of your week. Enjoy the last few days off before we jump into all the madness that'll go on for the 2 weeks after that. But I really appreciate it, man. You have a good one.
Thank you.